Okay, so if you would like to start, whoever would like to start with the introductions, go ahead.
I'm Melanie Wright, and I'm currently employed in regulatory strategy and delivery for RBC, Royal Bank of Canada. And I have had 15 years at RBC, but prior to that, I had a very varied career in the public sector first, and then the private sector in both consulting, healthcare, hydroelectrical power. So ultimately at heart, I'm a problem solver. And when you're dealing with regulatory and compliance, you're doing nothing but solving problems.
My name is Emma Kempton. I am the Global Head of Customer Success at Clausematch. I'm responsible for our EMEA and APAC clients, which range from small fintechs through to large enterprise clients. In terms of backgrounds, I've always worked in roles with clients, dealing with customers, communication, and ensuring that the customers reach their business needs. So that's me.
Hi, I'm Lindsey Brown at Clausematch. I am the Client Success Manager for our North America and Canadian market, and I focus primarily with enterprise clients. However, I do have SMB as well as mid-market experience. In terms of previous experience, I've been in the client success type of field for a little over 10 years, and I'm very excited to be here today. Thank you.
So we'll kick off with you, Melanie. First question, how is RegTech helping you manage your compliance processes at RBC?
So RegTech is making inroads into RBC baby steps at a time. We are a very large organization with a lot of silos. So bringing things together into one place is ultimately key for beginning to solve the problems that are facilitated by new regulations or new legislation. So bringing RegTech pieces in is the only way for the future in terms of being able to pull everything together and make sure that nothing is falling through the cracks as we achieve compliance with what's coming our way.
What is your favorite RegTech functionality? If you'd like to clarify on that one, maybe.
Sure. So once we have everything in one place, my favorite is being able to see from the very beginning to the very end through a full document taxonomy, through what we're required to do and how we're doing it, what we're doing, and then the end result and the controls and testing that goes along with that at the end of the line once we've implemented a reg. So I'm naturally an organized person, and so I like to be able to see everything in one place. So that's my favorite part of bringing in technologies to support an important function, is the ability to see it all in one place and see how it all links together and the story that it tells, and ultimately then the gaps that it proves so that we can begin to address those gaps. Because it's all well and fine to say you're compliant with something, but you have to be able to prove it, and you have to be able to prove how you're compliant and what you're doing to maintain that compliance.
How do you see the future of compliance, first of all?
So I see the future of compliance as having absolutely to go digital. There is so much more work than there was just even 5 years ago. And so the only way to manage that, short of throwing many more FTE at it, is to be enabled digitally so that you can leverage the power of what technology brings to the table. And that's where I see the change coming is, for many, many years, regulatory and compliance has been, in the early days, it was just on the side of somebody's desk. And if they got to it, they got to it. And if they didn't, oh well. Well, over the course of the last decade, for sure, we have seen legislation across the globe, which has given much more teeth to all of the various regulators. And so it can't be a side of the desk activity anymore. And so we've had lots and lots of hires into global compliance functions, but still you can't have this function resting solely in the minds of the people that are performing those roles. They have to have the tools in order to make it more efficient and provide a whole scale view of the work that they're doing. So I see the future of RegTech in the compliance and regulatory space as pretty much limitless, because honestly, the various governments around the world also see applying new regulations as a limitless supply too. So at some point, the organizations, even as large an organization as the one I work for, we can't just keep relying on the human element siloed in their various lines of business to be able to push this boulder up the mountain. There has to be a digital solution which knits everything together. So I think that that's the future for RegTech, is really making inroads into assisting various industries in achieving, and not only meeting, but achieving far bigger compliance and regulatory goals.
Okay, and following on from that, what are there any important updates, regulations, or factors that influence your compliance operations at the company you currently work for?
Yeah, I would say it's back to what I said about, it's a sheer volume. Like we're particularly in Canada, the province of Quebec is they're like a regulatory machine. They're just coughing up new regs, new pieces of legislation practically while we're all sleeping. And sometimes we have notice of them, and sometimes there was 2 instances just recently where we had zero notice, like this had not percolated up through the regular sources, and we were surprised that and guess what, we only have 6 months to make this happen. So this is the kind of thing that is going to force more adoption of a digital nature, because just the sheer volume of regulations that governments around the world are coming up with, it makes it impossible to keep doing it manually and relying on various humans siloed in their organizations to make it happen. It's just not possible. So that's where RegTech really has a niche position to fill that growing gap.
Following the above question, how is tech supporting you currently? So could you give me examples of maybe technology and how it is supporting you?
So RegTech is supporting us by, first of all, working individually with various specialty areas across our organization who are interested in the functionality of, for instance, Clausematch, where we can knit everything together and we can get a full document and obligation taxonomy. And that is leveraging some of the older technologies from the Archers of the world. So, Archer was kind of what I classify as a very, very first generation regulatory infrastructure that has perhaps not kept current with the pace of regulatory change around the globe. And so the FinTechs and the RegTechs are coming in and being able to leverage the infrastructure and the data through those older systems to help provide a much better, for one thing, a better client experience in the internal side, and a much happier experience on the compliance side with being able to provide this information. So I think that's probably a big difference in now that we're in 2022 and we're in the 3rd decade of the 21st century, is RegTech has the flexibility and the agility to come in piecemeal, place in team by team and pull it all together. Whereas, back 20 years ago, you had a massive legacy system implementation which had to involve the whole organization. So I see this as being much more a customization, because your expectations are unique to a particular area because they have a different set of regulators, for example, than another line of business. So being able to put together a specific niche solution is where the RegTech space really shines.
How have you seen tech software in the fintech space evolve over the past several years? For example, has the pandemic sped that up, do you think?
So my personal observation is it's exploded, particularly in the last, over the course of the pandemic, but even before then, the agility now that we see in the RegTech and the FinTech space is they see a need and they fill it. And even, RBC, we have a team called Ventures, where we've been building our own apps to service a particular client space. And I see that across the globe, where this is the future, where there's a need that's not being addressed. Therefore, we, company ABC, we will build and develop the app or the program that will meet that need. So that's, I see that this is a shift that we're not going to pull back from. This will be the way it goes. And so you either embrace this and bring it into your organization, or you're going to be left behind. That's my personal view.
Going into a more general thing, what would you say, in your opinion, what are the key compliance and automation trends for this year? And how do they impact the industry, maybe? What do you say?
I think adoption will continue to be the laggard. So the technologies are there, the knowledge is there. Going forward, it will continue to be the adoption of people who have always done things this way and can't see themselves taking on a new way of doing things. And it's breaking down well-established barriers that have been promoted by our legacy systems and our legacy way of doing things. So that, to me, I think will be the biggest barrier. Is we have the ability, we have lots of options, and we have the ability to bring those in-house, no matter whether you're making matchsticks or running a global bank. We have the ability to do this. It's just, is there the collective will? Because as I said earlier, the amount of regulation and the amount of legislation isn't ceasing. It's ramping up. And so that's going to be the gap, is what's the adoption going to be, and the ability to agree that this is the way forward.
Okay, and next to the trends, do you think there's any key challenges for the compliance and automation spaces in the medium to long term, would you say, and how can the industry deal with those, do you think?
So our biggest challenge that the industry itself faces on from the client side is, regulatory and compliance functions. We don't make money for organizations. We cost money. We are always asking for money. We're always having to pay fines for breaches. And so there's a constant friction between the areas in every organization that make the money, that promote the company, versus your regulatory and compliance and law group type functions that are just that, they're a function, and so they don't make money. So this is where there has to be a realization that, you know what, we have to stay out of jail. And the only way to stay out of compliance jail is we've got to boost our knowledge base of our regulatory and compliance function. So I see that as just, that's that constant tension. I think that there should be some healthy tension there, because you can't let any one area run the show wholly from a financial perspective. But there needs to be the recognition that you are ultimately going to be out of compliance, and with more and more regulators growing and finding ways to monitor their constituents, every organization is going to find themselves in a position where if they do not adequately fund their regulatory and compliance functions, they are going to get to a day where, the bill has come due, and the bill is from the government and from various regulators that report up through the government. So I see that as being the biggest challenge in the coming years. There are now really great RegTech solutions to fit multiple industries. But if those industries don't wake up and realize that they need to partner with these companies, that's where the rubber meets the road.
On to Emma's questions. So first of all, how do you work with smaller and bigger clients? Is the approach different between both?
Sure. So I'd say that the outcomes that we're working towards are the same regardless of client size. So they've all got the same end goal, which is to reach their business objectives. And through the use of our tool at Clausematch, we contribute to and ease their journey to get there. Having said that, though, like a one-size-fits-all approach is not going to add value to any clients. So we need to understand how they want to work with us best, what's the best fit for their business, and kind of a partnership approach, I would say, works best with our clients. But naturally, there are going to be some differences between smaller and larger clients. One of the areas, of course, is resource. So larger clients tend to have more resource available to them. Good example of that perhaps is a project manager or a project team to run an implementation, an adoption approach. Whereas for our smaller clients, the people that we're working with are often wearing many hats within the organisation, and that they often have to reprioritise their work, and they juggle lots of conflicting priorities. The other thing that I notice as well is with the smaller clients, because they potentially have less internal resource, they have less people to ask. So sometimes they're looking for, from the provider, they're looking for more reassurance that they're doing things correctly, or kind of just a sense check that really they are doing things in the same way or as well as other peers of theirs in the industry. And I don't see that so much with our larger clients. The reassurance is kind of gained internally or from experience of rolling out these things. So those are the major differences that I see, and how we try to adapt our approach on a client by client basis.
What functionality of Clausematch's platform would you say is most popular with these clients? So maybe you could give examples of the biggest clients and the small clients.
Sure. So I guess rather than functionality, I would say it's more about what the functionality allows them to achieve. So how are they going to get to what they need to get to efficiently? And I would say, like, based on my experience of working with Clausematch and a number of our clients, for the vast majority of them, the functionality or the outcomes that they're looking to achieve are the same, regardless of their size. They want to have all of their documents all in one place. They want to know where their universe of policies is. And they want to make sure that everybody is able to see the one version. That's what we're there for, and that's ultimately why people buy. That's what they want to see. That's the first goal. The second is that they want people to easily collaborate together to create, edit, approve documents, and to have an audit trail to prove that they've done that. And then thirdly, they literally want people to be able to see those policies within their organisation, to make sure that everybody's aware of them. There's no point in having a policy that's hidden. They want to be able to communicate those. They want people to understand those and to kind of weave them into their everyday day-to-day tasks. And those are the three core things that we're trying to achieve, really, when we're doing any implementation. There are, of course, other pieces of functionality that add on to that, but I find with my clients personally that comes later. So there is that's the core of what they're trying to achieve, and therefore I would say that that's the most popular functionality. I guess that's what I have to say on that.
How do you build good relationships with all of your customers now? The example is, have you settled into the new normal, or have things changed, would you say?
Okay, so I guess nothing's changed in the way that we approach or we see as key to building good relationships with clients. So the way in which we do that might be different, but we're trying to kind of keep to these core principles. So I guess timely, efficient communication is always a priority. I want to be able to demonstrate to my clients that their project and their satisfaction are important to me and to us at Clausematch. By being available, delivering on time, against the things that are important to them. It's also important that we make sure that they feel that their ideas, concerns are taken seriously. But we also see the need to adapt to our client's style. So their formality, their preferred method of communication, instead of just sticking to tools that we've all used traditionally. Good example, I hope, is that we have a number of clients that we have like a joint Slack channel with, a shared Monday.com board with, where we kind of collaborate together, and it evolves as the project goes on. But we still have a number of clients who prefer the more traditional methods of emails, PowerPoint decks, communicated at standard time intervals during the year. And you know, those things. So we're evolving with our clients, but we're still happy to use the kind of traditional tools as well. But going back to the main question was, have things changed? Definitely, yes, things have changed. Not what everyone's trying to achieve, but the way that they do that. COVID, sorry to bring it up, but COVID shifted the way that we do business and the way that we interact with each other. In some ways, I think it removed some of the formality of the face-to-face meetings at a client site, you know, suited and booted, coming into someone else's environment. And it replaced it with some of the things that I think are lovely. So it replaced it with little insights into the customer's home, their environment, what they're doing. In some instances, little snippets of their family, you know, as their children trotted through the door, and they met my children on some occasions as well. It also meant that we shared a little bit more. I think in your own environment, you feel a little bit more comfortable. So we shared some sort of personal experiences or personal struggles, especially around homeschooling, or especially from my perspective. You know, whilst we were trying to run businesses together, we also saw that people had lives and outside of those businesses. So I think relationships almost were formed in a very different way than they were when we had those face-to-face meetings back in the day. The other thing that's different, I would say, when we were in the world of face-to-face meetings, a normal day for me would look like 2 or 3 client meetings, because I would be traveling between locations, you know, perhaps go for lunch with somebody on the way, but a full day would look like 2 or 3 client meetings. Whereas now online calls can be stacked back to back throughout the day. So it's more tiring, but it's certainly more efficient to be able to do it in that way. But nothing beats face-to-face communication, and some client meetings are returning, which is fantastic, and face-to-face events as well. And for people that like people, really nothing beats that way of building relationships, reading body language, making proper connections. So I think, you know, I think both ways can work. But there are big differences between what normal used to look like and what normal looks like now. I think personally, someone that took a long time to adjust to the new way of working, I missed the people, but I would say now that I have settled into this being kind of a new normal, maybe a bit more of a hybrid now. And yeah, I think another part of the question was, have CS teams nailed it? I don't know whether CS teams have nailed it. I think businesses and organisations are all just trying to do their best to adapt to working together and to make the best of the working relationship and you know, the setup that arrives for them. I'm sure some teams have nailed it. I don't know. Everyone's just doing their best, I think.
I think it is great to recognize that over the past 2.5 years, a number of strong relationships have been forged without ever meeting face to face and across multiple time zones. And I think that is, you know, while some people see that as a disadvantage, I think that's definitely a benefit and an advantage that can be leveraged as we grow. You know, definitely we had a global perspective. Most companies that were functioning around the world had a global perspective before the pandemic, and that has only been amped up over the course of the pandemic. And I think it's a feather in the cap to the RegTech and FinTech companies who were able to really move forward with forging relationships with their clients in the face of a global pandemic, where normally they would either fly to see the client or fly the clients over and have, you know, in-house strategy sessions, et cetera, et cetera. Well, those all had to be replaced, and they were just as successful. And, you know, the relationships were able to be built on camera, which is, you know, that's great, because now, you know, it can be done, and it's an alternate path forward for the future.
So Lindsey, what are the specifics of working with your customers post-COVID? It might interlaps with some of the stuff that Emma said, but if you could provide your opinion on that.
Yes, both Emma and Melanie had great points. So what I've noticed working remotely post-COVID with my clients is that I need to come to the table with a little bit more empathy. And one thing I do agree with is, and thing I've seen is trends for client success have really grown over the past 2 years. The CSM position is so important now because we really have access to the entire organization. If we're forging those relationships correctly, I will have access to our product team, anything internal, and be that one point person to where I can go and advocate for my client. So really building out that CSM structure and the organizational feature of it has been great. And post-COVID definitely helps because I can jump on a Zoom very quickly, or I don't even mind giving out my personal cell number to my clients. If anything happens, if we have any type of breach or down system or downtime, my clients can easily text me and I can go to the correct person within our organization to really solve that matter. So post-COVID, although I miss meeting in person and building those relationships, has really helped bring CSM functions to life.
The second question's again kind of similar to something that was asked, Emma, which is which functionality is of most interest, would you say, with your customers post-COVID?
Sure. So it might be a little bit different for the EMEA market, but what I've noticed with our larger enterprise clients over in the US and Canada is there's been a major focus on API integration and metadata that can be pulled from that API integration. Melanie made a great point earlier that it's almost as if she wakes up every morning and there's a new regulation on her desk that must be followed. So what we're seeing is a huge push for our clients to be able to access that metadata and information from API integrations and report to either the DOJ or other regulations to meet a simple 2-week audit.
Do you have any specifics about working with bigger and smaller clients?
Yes, so I have several SMB mid-market, but I do primarily focus with my enterprise clients. What I've noticed is enterprise clients, although much more demanding just because of the size of the organization, they provide best practices that I can definitely build downstream to help out our smaller clients, our SMBs and our mid-markets that are really looking to become the first in class within their market. So although they are a bit demanding, I do love my enterprise clients, but what I noticed is one thing that they are great about is giving us suggestions. And again, as a CSM, I can take those suggestions and quickly go back to our product team and help prioritize what's going to come out on our product roadmap. So our enterprise clients are great in that aspect, and especially helping out our SMBs and our mid-market when it comes to best practices.